As soon as you are through the gate, you are welcomed by a PGL Milek TS8BS, followed by a great variety of mostly Soviet engineered vehicles, tanks, ground vehicles, and a little bit of NATO manufactured. And of course, these Soviet engineered vehicles were made for Poland. And somehow, some vehicles were in pristine state, where others had rust or faded paint, or even covered under a blanket or a sheet, depends on how you want to call it. And that made it a poor, sad sight to see, especially if you see vehicles which you have never seen before, or which you have used in a certain game, present or past, and see it that way IRL for the first time. And then in the middle of the tanks and the ground vehicles is this Antonov AN2 on display, before you go back to the ground vehicles. And speaking of which, some of these ground vehicles have instruments mounted which look very unfamiliar. And apparently these photos back to back are all different kinds of missile launchers. And for most of them it was obvious, but going back to the very first one, I didn't think it was a missile launcher. It looked so unfamiliar to me, the construction, where on these two it's obvious that these were missile launchers. And then you're getting a few more ground vehicles before you go to the big area where all the planes are stationed on display. So the MiGs, a bomber, and also the mills. And let's begin with the walk around on my favorite plane on display. The MiG-23. Saw it in Berlin for the very first time. 3 or 4 that day were on display. Now it is my favorite jet to use in Metal Storm. And now I'm standing right in front of it again. What a machine. Every time when an enemy in Metal Storm wanted to shut down my MiG with one of the rockets, I took the swing wing like this, and I managed to outrun several locks. Whenever they shot me, I had no choice, but when the enemy had a lock on me, I swinged the wings back like this, and they couldn't hold the lock on me. Nice to see it in person again. And this was my favorite jet to use before I went on to the MiG-23. And after the MiG-23, I kind of am struggling right now to use the other jets. But this was my favorite before the MiG-23, the MiG-21. Yeah, the majority of these planes on display are the shock cone nosed jets. According to the Wikipedia of this museum, 5 different versions or variants of the MiG-21, the MS, PS, US, SPS and UM, and a couple Sukhois, which is a standalone Su-20, an Su-7BM, Su-7BKL, Su-7U. And another standalone plane was this Ilyushin IL-28, a bomber. Man, I hope to see this one in Aeronautica one day. Please, Aeronautica, if you see this, make it happen. Put the IL-28 in game. Anyways, back to the side stuff. Yeah, like I said, a lot of shotgun-nosed jets, but also a set of 3 helicopters, which are MIL Mi-2s or PCL Mi-2s in this case. The one I used in Flight Simulator times 2. And times 3. The MIL Mi-8 or PCL in this case. There we go. PCL Mi-2R. First time seeing MIL helicopters. No, I said wrong. First time I see another type of MIL helicopters than the Mi-8. Because so far I only have seen the Mi-8 several times. Awesome to see these versions. And the versions are an Mi-2R, Mi-2T and an Mi-2URM or URN. And if you are standing by the helicopters, you have a nice view on the vehicles below, which I think are for maintenance. At least it's surrounded by gates. To finish the planes parts, we have left a regular MiG-15, a LIM Mi-2 based on the MiG-15 BIS, a LIM 5 which is based on the MiG-17F, a LIM 6 BIS which I don't know the MiG variant, and an SB LIM 2A, which I also don't know what the MiG variant is. One plane from the wiki, however, was absent that day, and I'm not sure if it's gone forever. Maybe someone in the comments can tell me what happened to it. But what I missed was a Yakovlev Yak-23. Does someone know what happened to it? And we're back at the ground vehicles, which this museum has a lot. We now have entered the surveillance and radar vehicles, with this one as my personal favorite. And also this mobile radar station. Now, believe it or not, but this type of rocket, not this exact one of course, but this type of rocket shot down the U-2 during the Cold War. There was a sign in front of it that explained the whole thing, but I was stupid enough to not take a picture of that. But trust me, it's there. 8 minutes talked about the outside exhibition, time to go inside. And let's start with this model of what I assume is the bunker or fort during the war times, with an oversized cannon on top. This part of the museum has a lot of objects on display. Now, I'm not sure what space travel has to do with an army museum, but at least we're having a landing module from the Soyuz 30, if I say it correctly. There is another bunker entrance and there are more vehicles located. But not only vehicles, but also flags and other pieces of artillery and weaponry. But not only army vehicles or artillery, but also regular cars. Like this 1939 Buick Special. What it's doing there, I don't know. I googled it, I went through a rabbit hole, didn't find my answers. I assume it was a car from a certain high-ranked officer or whatever high staff member from the army. That's what I assume. Maybe the president of Poland, I don't know. But anyways, this museum is filled with ground vehicles and artillery from both World War I and World War II. And that is very interesting to see. And that brings me back from what I said in the advice video. I'm not debunking this museum. Of course it has its flaws, which are difficult to know beforehand. But the collection itself is actually nice. It has a nice, decent collection with certain varieties and beautiful to look at. I'm pretty sure that military enthusiasts as I am will go here and also be like, man, I didn't know this one existed, that one looks new to me, that one looks unfamiliar. It has a great variety of well-known stuff and stuff you've probably never seen in your life or never heard of. And before you leave the gate, there is one piece of the exhibit that is worth looking at, and that is the artillery and cannons that are on display there. Flags, artillery, cannons from all sorts of calibers, from the tiny fellas to the big boys. It is actually intimidating to see those amount of those artillery pieces in one little spot. But not only that, also again some vehicles, like this landing platform. But a couple tanks disassembled in one piece. It's a museum with basically everything. So once again, yes, this museum is worth a visit. Now, as a finishing touch, and something I never done before, I'll go through my favorite pieces of this very museum. And I will also say why those are my favorites. Let's start with the OT-64 Scott. This was my favorite use in Armored Warfare back when I was able to play the game. Unfortunately now the Epic Games launcher has some issues with launching Armored Warfare. I'm still working with the devs on the fix, but it's difficult. I hope to be back very soon with that. And a couple months prior, before I visited this museum, I was able to see it in action during an event on our National Military Museum. I don't think I have to explain this one or this one. I think those are speaking for themselves why they are my favorite. I also don't think these three fellas need any more explanation on why I liked those very much. Just nice to see some mills other than the Mi-8. The AT-T tractor with the P40 configuration. It just looked buff and outstanding to me compared to the other radar vehicles. The T-34, because of the T-34 movie that I saw a couple years back. The AN-2, the Antonov AN-2, because I love biplanes a lot, and let's be real, who doesn't like the biggest one? The Ilyushin IL-28 bomber. It just looks menacing, it looks outstanding next to the fighter jets, and once again I really hope that it comes to Aeronautica. It is in the making or considered according to the Trello, but we'll see in the future. Aeronautica, if you listen again, please put it in the game. And last but not least, I was happy to see a TKS Tanket again. But why again? Well, I never covered this in previous YouTube channels under the PR Traveler name. But in 2017 I went to Poland as well, but a whole different direction. I went to Auschwitz. I went on an educational trip and also visited the Oskar Schindler factory. This is now turned for years into a museum with certain exhibits like his office, where Liam Neeson also was sitting during the film Schindler's List. Also the famous gate, the factory gate. This museum also has an exhibition from the German invasion in Poland in 1939, and you see it coming. Lo and behold, within these details is also the Polish TKS tank cat on display. At the time I didn't see much tanks from that up close. I also wasn't into military that much. I knew I saw this one, hope to see another one, and thankfully I did. And with this bombshell, I have no more favorites to mention, so it's time to wrap the video up. Thank you guys so much for watching for this video. If you like this one, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications to not miss out anything, you know the drill. Check down the socials via the links in the description. On my left you can see 2 videos, and of course on my right the 2 subscribe buttons for the main channels. I'll see you guys back tomorrow. Bye bye.